Healing, the word itself carries a soft promise of return to wholeness, to peace, to strength. We hear it in self-help books, social media quotes, and well-meaning advice from friends. But rarely do we talk about how messy healing actually is. Rarely do we acknowledge the deep truth. Healing is not a straight path. It's not linear. It doesn't follow a schedule. And it rarely looks like the tidy, upward journey we imagine. Real healing is confusing. It's exhausting. It's full of detours and relapses and quiet victories no one else sees. But it is in those very moments, in the zigzags, the stillness, the falling back, that the real transformation takes place. We live in a world obsessed with progress. If we're not getting better, faster, stronger, we feel like we're failing. So we bring that mindset into healing too. We expect ourselves to get over heartbreak in a few weeks. We want anxiety to go away after one breakthrough. We believe grief should have an expiration date. And when it doesn't, we panic. We wonder what's wrong with us. We assume we're broken, or weak, or just not trying hard enough. But nothing could be further from the truth. Healing doesn't obey the rules of productivity. It doesn't respond to deadlines. You don't graduate from pain the way you graduate from school. There are no medals for moving on quickly. And yet, society praises speed. You're so strong, they say when you act like you're fine. But sometimes the strongest thing you can do is admit that you're not. That you're still hurting. That you're still healing. And that's okay. The truth is, healing is unpredictable. Some days, you'll feel like you've made it. You'll breathe deeper, smile wider, and believe that the worst is behind you. And then the next day, a memory hits you out of nowhere, or a small trigger knocks you off your feet, and suddenly you're back in the darkness you thought you left behind. And in that moment, shame tries to creep in. It tells you, see, you haven't changed. You're still stuck, but that's a lie. Progress isn't measured by perfection. It's measured by persistence. If you're still showing up, still feeling, still choosing to be here, that is progress. We must stop romanticizing healing as a beautiful ascent, and instead recognize it as the rugged, non-linear journey it really is. Healing looks like crying unexpectedly after months of being fine. It looks like setting a boundary and then feeling guilty about it. It looks like taking 2 steps forward and then falling 5 steps back, and still choosing to rise again. We're told to move on, but not taught how to sit with pain. We're encouraged to stay strong, but not given the tools to feel safely. We're surrounded by highlight reels, filtered smiles, and stories of overnight transformation. But healing doesn't happen in the spotlight. It happens in quiet, lonely spaces. In long nights where you face yourself and stay. In small acts of courage, getting out of bed, asking for help, saying no, starting over again. The myth of instant recovery is dangerous. It shames people into silence. It convinces them they're behind. It isolates them in their pain. But when you understand that healing is not linear, you free yourself from that pressure. You realize that your messy process is valid. that your timeline is yours alone, and that setbacks are not failures, they're part of the journey. Imagine a wound. On the surface, it might scab quickly, but underneath, your body is working overtime, rebuilding tissue, regenerating cells, fighting infection. The real healing is hidden. Tea takes time, and if you pick at it too soon, if you try to force it to close before it's ready, you cause more damage. The same is true with emotional healing. You can't rush it. You can't fake it. You can't skip the pain. You must allow it to teach you, to break you open, to soften what hardened, to reshape what was shattered. So if you're in the middle of healing, whether it's from trauma, loss, burnout, betrayal, or 1,000 invisible wounds, please hear this. You are not broken. You are not failing. You are simply human. And being human means being in process. It means being complex. It means having good days and hard days and learning to hold space for both. Healing is not about returning to who you were before the pain. It's about becoming someone new, someone wiser, softer, stronger in the places that once felt weak. And that kind of becoming doesn't happen overnight. It requires patience, gentleness, repetition, and most of all, compassion for yourself. Let go of the idea that you should be over it by now. Let go of the voice that tells you you're falling behind. Healing is not a race. It's not a competition. You're not late. You're right on time for your own path, your own pace, your own becoming. You don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need to be perfect to deserve rest, or peace, or joy, even if you're still struggling, even if you still cry. Even if your progress doesn't look like anyone else's, you are worthy of healing. You are allowed to take your time, and you are allowed to honor your journey exactly as it is. Because the truth is, healing doesn't always look like victory. Sometimes it looks like survival, like quietly refusing to give up, like choosing to breathe, even when your chest is heavy. Like whispering, "I'm still here," and meaning it. That is healing. That is enough. And that is where we begin. There's a moment in every healing journey where you think you've finally turned the corner. You feel lighter. You've had some good days in a row. You start to believe maybe I'm getting better. And then, out of nowhere, something shifts. The weight returns, the sadness creeps in. The anxiety tightens its grip, and suddenly, you find yourself back in the space you worked so hard to leave. It's disorienting, discouraging, and sometimes it feels like a personal failure. You might say to yourself, "I thought I was past this." Or worse, maybe I'm not healing at all. But that thought, while deeply human, is simply not true. The setback is not the end. It's part of the process. And sometimes, it's the part that matters most. Healing doesn't happen in a straight line. It unfolds in waves. Some days the tide is low, and you can walk freely across the sand of your life. Other days the waves crash hard, and you're forced to stop, to retreat, to breathe. But just because you've been knocked down again doesn't mean you're starting over. You're not at square one. You are further than you think, stronger than you realize, and more equipped than ever to rise again, because this time, you're not who you were before. A setback can feel like defeat, but often, it's a sign of deeper work being done. Maybe something old surfaced that you're finally strong enough to face. Maybe your mind is testing your commitment to the new path. Maybe the discomfort is your body's way of reminding you that healing is layered, and sometimes the only way forward is to go deeper. Not to relive the pain, but to understand it more clearly. To sit with it long enough to see what it's teaching you, not to fear it, but to befriend it. That's a radical thought, isn't it? To befriend your pain. But if healing teaches us anything, it's that the things we resist the most are often the very things that hold the key to our freedom. When we stop running from our wounds, we start hearing what they have to say. Pain doesn't show up in your life to ruin it. It shows up to reveal what still needs tending, what still needs compassion, what still needs truth. And sometimes, it comes back not because you're broken, but because you're finally ready to listen differently. You are not weak for falling back. You are not a failure for hurting again. You are human. And being human means healing in layers, not in leaps. It means revisiting the same pain from a new level of awareness. It means re-experiencing familiar emotions, but responding to them with new tools. It means that even though it hurts, this time, you know how to hold yourself better. This time, you know what you need. This time, even though it feels the same, you are not the same. Let that sink in. You are not the same. Even if the pain feels familiar, you are not who you were when it first arrived. You've learned, you've grown, you've survived things you thought would destroy you. And that matters. That means something. That means the setback doesn't erase your progress, it reveals it. Because this time, you're not giving up. This time, you understand that healing isn't about never feeling pain again, it's about being able to meet it with gentleness, to walk through it with grace, to know that you'll make it through without losing yourself. You don't need to be perfect to be healing. You don't need to have only good days to be growing. You don't need to erase the hard parts to be moving forward. The presence of pain does not equal the absence of progress. Sometimes, what looks like breaking down is actually breaking through. In truth, setbacks are checkpoints. They show us where we're still tender. They remind us what we've buried. They invite us to pause and reflect. Not because we're failing, but because we're evolving. They give us a moment to assess what's working, what isn't, what needs more time, more care, more truth. The moment you stop seeing your setbacks as shameful and start seeing them as part of the process, is the moment you reclaim your power. And yes, it hurts. No one chooses pain on purpose. No one asks for another round of anxiety, grief, heartbreak, or burnout. But when it comes, as it inevitably does, you have a choice. You can resist it and make yourself the enemy, or you can meet it with curiosity and kindness. Ask it, what are you trying to show me? What haven't I allowed myself to feel? What part of me still believes I'm not enough? What haven't I forgiven? What do I need right now? You don't need to rush to answers. Sometimes just asking the questions is enough. Because the moment you turn inward with compassion instead of criticism, you soften. And healing begins again not because you forced it, but because you allowed it. This is the messy truth of growth. It's not always visible. You may not have new medals or milestones to show. But if you've begun to speak to yourself more gently, if you've allowed yourself to rest without guilt, if you've reached out for help instead of hiding it, means you are healing. Even if no one sees it, even if it doesn't feel like progress, even if you're still aching. The world may measure success in achievements, but your soul knows better. It knows that healing is in the quiet choices, choosing to stay, choosing to believe you're worthy. Choosing to keep showing up for yourself even on the hard days, even through the setbacks, especially through the setbacks. So if today feels heavy, if the progress you thought you made seems to be slipping through your fingers, breathe. This doesn't mean you've failed. This doesn't mean you're back where you started. It simply means you're human. Still healing, still learning, still becoming. And that is not something to be ashamed of. That is something to be proud of. Some wounds don't bleed. Some don't leave scars you can point to. Some don't cause a limp or require a cast. But they hurt just the same, sometimes more. These are the wounds no one can see, the ones carried quietly beneath a calm smile, behind polite conversations, under perfect appearances. The pain of a past betrayal, the trauma of growing up unseen, the loneliness of never feeling truly understood, the shame buried beneath high achievement. These wounds don't show up on X-rays or MRIs, but they weigh heavy. Heavier than most people realize, because when pain is invisible, it often goes unvalidated. And when it goes unvalidated, it begins to feel unreal, unworthy of attention even to the person carrying it. That's one of the hardest parts about emotional healing, having to prove to yourself that your pain is real, that what happened to you mattered, that you are allowed to feel the way you feel, even if no one else saw it, even if others had it worse, even if time has passed. Healing from invisible wounds often begins with one simple but radical act: believing yourself. Trusting your own memory, trusting your own body when it flinches, tightens, or shuts down. Trusting your feelings even when they're inconvenient. Because what the world can't see still affects everything: your thoughts, your decisions, your relationships, your ability to feel safe. It's easy for people to offer sympathy when something is obvious, when you've lost a loved one, when you've had a visible accident, when there's a public break or collapse. But the heartbreak of being dismissed, minimized, or misunderstood when your wounds are hidden, that can be an injury in itself. It teaches you to second-guess your own pain. It teaches you to downplay your struggles. It teaches you to wear a mask even tighter. And over time, that mask becomes so fused to your identity that even you forget what's underneath. But healing asks for truth, and truth requires the courage to face what's inside, even if it's quiet, even if no one else validates it, even if it makes you question everything. Because when you finally stop denying the impact of those invisible wounds, something shifts. You begin to see how deeply those old patterns run. How often your self-protection becomes self-sabotage. How much energy you've spent trying to appear okay, while quietly falling apart. And when you really see it, you begin to understand why you're so tired. Why you've been holding your breath. Why joy feels distant and rest feels impossible. This isn't weakness. It's the wear of carrying pain without space to name it. It's the exhaustion of acting normal in a world that doesn't make room for emotional complexity. And healing, real healing, requires you to stop performing wellness. To stop pretending you're fine when you're not. To let the pain exist without judgment. Not because you want to stay in it forever, but because you finally understand that suppressing it won't make it disappear, it only buries it deeper. You don't owe anyone an explanation for the wounds they can't see. You don't need permission to hurt. You don't need a visible reason to struggle. If you feel broken, numb, anxious, angry, lost, it's valid, it's real. And you deserve support, compassion, and space to heal, whether or not the world understands it. There's a particular kind of bravery required to grieve something no one else acknowledges. To mourn a childhood that looked fine on paper, but felt empty and confusing. To face the ways you abandoned yourself to be loved. To name trauma in families that still deny it. To recover from emotional neglect in relationships that seemed functional. That kind of work is silent, slow, and often unseen, but it is sacred, because it rewrites the script of your life from the inside out. And yes, it's hard, because invisible wounds often show up as self-doubt, people-pleasing, emotional numbness, hyper-independence. They show up in your hesitance to trust, your tendency to over-explain, your fear of being too much. They live in your nervous system, in your body's subtle reactions, in the way your shoulders tense when someone raises their voice. And healing means becoming conscious of all of that. Not to shame yourself, but to reclaim your power. To say, this wound may be invisible, but it has shaped me and now I will shape myself. When you start acknowledging your invisible wounds, you begin to understand that your story has always been worthy. That your pain is not something to minimize, it's something to honor. And honoring your pain doesn't mean you stay stuck in it. It means you walk with it. You learn from it. You grow around it. You stop letting it define you, but you also stop pretending it didn't matter. You start choosing softness, not as weakness, but as strength. You learn to rest without guilt. You speak your truth even if it trembles. You stop apologizing for being sensitive, for needing time, for asking for space. Because healing isn't about becoming someone who's always happy, always unbothered, always put together. It's about becoming someone who's whole. Someone who can hold grief and gratitude in the same breath. Someone who can say, I am healing, even if no one else sees it. If you're carrying invisible wounds right now, please know this, you are not alone. There are millions of people walking through the world with silent pain, holding it all together for the sake of appearance. You are not weak for struggling. You are not dramatic for feeling deeply. You are not a burden for needing care. You are human, and you deserve to heal. Your pain matters, even if it's quiet. Your healing matters, even if it's slow. Your story matters, even if no one else has heard it yet. Keep going, gently. You are doing far better than you think. We live in a world that praises the performance of strength. We're taught to put on a brave face, to smile through the pain, to bounce back quickly so that no one worries. No one asks, no one sees what's really going on beneath the surface. From a young age, we're told to be okay, even when we're not. Don't cry, tough it out, get over it. So we internalize the idea that to be acceptable, to be lovable, to be successful, we must always seem fine. But that mindset is not healing. That mindset is survival, and there comes a time when survival is no longer enough. True healing begins the moment we stop trying so hard to be okay. Not because we've given up, but because we've stopped pretending. We've stopped performing wellness. We've stopped carrying the pressure to smile when our hearts are heavy. We've stopped dismissing our pain just to make others comfortable. And in that moment, we reclaim something vital: our honesty, our humanness, our right to not be okay sometimes and still be worthy of love, care, and respect. It's hard, though, because letting go of the need to be okay feels like weakness at first. It feels like defeat, especially if you've built your identity around being the strong one, the dependable one, the one who always has it together. There's a kind of pride that comes with being emotionally self-sufficient, a quiet reward in being the one who never breaks. But eventually, the cost of always being okay is too high. You begin to disappear inside the role. You stop recognizing your own needs. You grow resentful. You feel alone even when you're surrounded by people, because the mask you wear has become your entire face. But you are not a performance. You are not a role to play. You are a living, breathing, feeling human being. And sometimes, being human means falling apart. It means crying on a random Tuesday. It means not having answers. It means waking up with a tight chest and deciding to go slowly. And none of that makes you broken. It makes you real. The truth is, no one is okay all the time. Not even the people who look like they have it all figured out. Not even the ones with perfect Instagram feeds, or steady careers, or polished routines. Behind every strong person is a story they rarely share. Behind every confident smile, a history of doubt, pain, growth, and resilience. And when we remember that, we free ourselves from the impossible standard of constant stability. Letting go of the need to be okay is not about giving in to hopelessness. It's about creating space for authenticity. It's about being honest about what hurts, so that you can begin to understand it. It's about telling the truth to yourself, and maybe, if it feels safe, to someone else. Because healing requires truth, and there can be no truth without vulnerability. Imagine this: you're carrying a backpack full of rocks. Each rock is a moment you didn't speak up, a time you said you were fine but weren't, a memory you buried because it was too painful. At first, the weight seems manageable. You adjust, you get used to the heaviness. You tell yourself, "I'm strong enough to carry this," but over time, the weight changes you. It makes you tired. It shapes how you move through the world. And still, you keep adding more. Why? Because you're afraid of putting it down. You're afraid of what it will mean to finally say, "I'm not okay." But what if putting it down doesn't make you weak? What if it makes you free? Letting go of the pressure to be okay opens a door to rest, a door to softness, a door to receive help without guilt, a door to finally exhale. And through that door comes healing, not forced, not rushed, but honest, sustainable healing. The kind that doesn't depend on image or approval. The kind that grows from truth, not performance. You don't have to explain your sadness to everyone. You don't owe the world an articulate breakdown of why you're struggling. But you do owe yourself the kindness of not pretending. You owe yourself a soft place to land. You owe yourself the right to feel, to fall, to rest and rise again. This doesn't mean you wallow. It doesn't mean you give up. It simply means you stop shaming yourself for being human. You stop attaching your worth to your ability to handle it. You allow yourself to fall apart sometimes, knowing that falling apart is not failure, it's part of the rhythm of healing. Break down, breathe, rebuild, repeat. If today is a day where you're not okay, know this: that's not a setback. That's not a flaw. That's not something to fix. That's something to honor. Your emotions are messengers, not enemies. Your tears are teachers, not signs of weakness. Your tiredness is not laziness, it's wisdom. Your body, your heart, your mind, they're all speaking. Listen to them, trust them. They're not against you. They're guiding you home. Letting go of the need to be okay creates room for support. It allows others to show up for you. It invites intimacy. It creates community. Because when you're real with your pain, you make it safer for others to be real with theirs. And that's where healing multiplies, not just for you, but for everyone around you. So give yourself permission today. Permission to feel what you feel, to not have all the answers, to move slower, to cancel the meeting, to cry in the shower, to say, "I need a break," to say, "I'm overwhelmed," to say, "I'm healing." And most of all, give yourself permission to not be okay and to know that even in that space, you are still growing, still worthy, still loved. There's a quiet myth that often follows us into our darkest moments, the belief that we have to heal alone. That because the pain is ours, the work must be ours too, that no one else will understand. That no one else can help, that asking for support somehow diminishes our strength. And so we isolate, we suffer in silence. We wear the smile, we go through the motions, and we convince ourselves that healing must be done in solitude. But that's not true. That's not how we were made. Healing may begin within, but it is sustained through connection. We don't heal alone, we heal in relationship, in presence, in community. It takes courage to invite someone into your pain. It's easier to say I'm fine than to say I'm scared. It's easier to act strong than to admit that some days you barely hold yourself together. But every time you let someone witness your truth, every time you allow another human to sit with you in your sorrow without fixing or judging or rushing, it creates space. Not just for relief, but for transformation. There is something deeply sacred about being seen in your rawness and not being turned away. It tells your nervous system, your inner child, your scared, tired self, you are not too much, you are not alone. We all carry wounds, some fresh, some old, some inherited. And the weight becomes unbearable not necessarily because of the pain itself, but because we carry it without witness. But when someone says, "Me too," or "I've been there," or simply "I see you," something softens. The burden doesn't disappear, but it feels lighter. You're no longer carrying it in silence. You're no longer convincing yourself that you're the only one who feels this way. Connection reminds us that suffering is universal, and that being human means needing each other. Of course, not everyone is safe to share with. Not every space will honor your vulnerability, and that's why discernment matters. But just because some people haven't shown up for you, doesn't mean no one ever will. You are not destined to be alone in your healing. There are people, some you haven't even met yet, who will hold your pain with gentleness, who will listen without needing to fix, who will remind you, in moments when you forget, that your worth is not based on your productivity, your cheerfulness, or your emotional stability. You are worthy simply because you exist. You were never meant to carry everything by yourself. Even the strongest structures need support beams. Even the tallest trees need the soil to hold their roots. Even stars, as solitary as they seem, exist in galaxies. And you, in all your complexity, deserve support too. You deserve spaces where your emotions are welcomed, not managed. Where your process is respected, not rushed. Where your healing is not a burden, but a shared honor. Sometimes the greatest healing comes not from words, but from presence. A hand held in silence. A friend who doesn't flinch when the tears come. A voice on the other end of the line that says, "Take your time. I'm here." These moments don't erase the pain, but they remind you that you are not walking through it in the dark. Someone is holding a candle with you, even if they can't carry the weight. And that reminder can be enough to keep going. There is no shame in needing help. There is no weakness in leaning on someone else. The idea that we must be entirely self-sufficient is not strength, it's conditioning. And it isolates us from the very thing we were built for, connection. Asking for help is an act of courage. Letting someone see your mess is an act of trust. Accepting love when you don't feel lovable, that's a profound step toward healing. And yes, it's vulnerable. Yes, it's scary. But healing in isolation will only take you so far. Eventually, you will hit a wall built from silence, shame, and the fear of being seen. And that wall cannot be dismantled alone. It falls only when light is let in, when someone sees you and stays. When someone offers presence instead of platitudes. When someone says, "You don't have to do this by yourself. You don't have to do this by yourself." Let that sink in, not as a nice phrase, but as a truth you live into. Healing doesn't have to be lonely. You can build a circle, even if it starts with one person. A therapist, a friend, a mentor, a support group. A journal you write in until you're ready to speak aloud. Each of these can be an anchor. Each of these can hold space for your becoming. And over time, as your nervous system begins to trust that you're no longer in danger, you'll open more. Not all at once, but slowly, as you're ready. One of the most beautiful things about healing with others is realizing that you're not a burden, that your story, in all its mess and grief and complexity, has a place in the world. That being cared for doesn't mean you're broken, it means you're brave. And the more we normalize this, the more we create a culture where people don't have to pretend, perform, or push through silently. We create a world where healing is held with reverence, not rushed into silence. So if you've been trying to do this all alone, this is your invitation to reach out. Not because you can't do it alone, but because you don't have to. Let someone in. Say the thing you've been holding in your chest. Let the tears fall in someone's presence. Let your voice shake. Let your story be heard. Let yourself be held, not because you're weak, but because you're finally ready to stop pretending you don't need anyone. You were never meant to walk this road alone, and the beauty of healing is not just in the return to wholeness, but in the relationships that carry us there. One of the most misleading ideas we carry into healing is the belief that progress always feels like forward motion, that healing should feel empowering, that recovery should come with clarity, confidence, and a constant sense of becoming better. But in truth, real healing is far less glamorous. Often, it's slow, confusing, and painfully quiet. Sometimes progress doesn't feel like progress at all. It feels like exhaustion. It feels like sitting in the same emotion for days. It feels like pulling yourself out of bed even when you still feel broken. It feels like revisiting the same pain, the same trigger, the same doubt, and choosing not to run from it again. That is progress. But it's hard to see it when you're inside it. When your mind is screaming, "You should be further along than this," when the world around you rewards only the visible milestones. When your feed is full of transformation stories and shiny endings, but your life feels like a messy middle, it's hard not to compare. It's hard not to feel behind. But healing is not a race. There is no finish line. And often, what looks like being stuck is actually your nervous system slowly learning safety. Your mind slowly unlearning years of survival patterns. Your body slowly releasing what it's held on to for too long. Progress isn't just the big, brave decisions, it's the small, quiet ones too. The decision to pause instead of react. The decision to rest instead of numb. The decision to let yourself cry without explaining why. The decision to say no when people expect yes. The decision to begin again, even after falling back into old habits. These moments don't come with applause, but they are evidence of change. They are the roots growing underground, the transformation happening out of sight. Sometimes progress looks like setting boundaries and then feeling guilty about them. Sometimes it looks like going to therapy and feeling worse before it gets better. Sometimes it looks like distancing yourself from people you love because they no longer feel safe. Sometimes it looks like choosing peace over perfection, choosing presence over productivity, choosing discomfort over denial. These are not always easy or obvious choices, but they matter, they accumulate. They shape you slowly, in layers you might not even notice until much later. We often expect healing to be this upward climb, each step higher than the last, each day a little easier than the one before. But healing rarely moves in a straight direction, it spirals. You revisit old wounds with new eyes. You return to familiar pain with more awareness. And while it might feel like regression, it's not. It's reprocessing. It's your brain and body working through layers they weren't ready to face before. Just because it feels the same doesn't mean it is the same. This time, you're meeting the pain with more truth, more tools, more self-compassion. Progress doesn't mean the absence of pain. It means learning to coexist with it differently. It means knowing that having a bad day doesn't erase all your good days. That struggling today doesn't mean you haven't grown. That setbacks are not the end of your healing, they're part of the rhythm. Inhale, exhale, rise, fall, heal, break, and heal again. This rhythm is not failure, it is life. If you only celebrate the moments where you feel strong and certain, you'll miss the miracle of all the moments where you kept going even when you didn't feel like it. Where you showed up for yourself in the dark. Where you spoke kindly to your inner voice even as it trembled. Where you rested without guilt. Where you dared to hope, even if just for a second. These are not just moments of survival, they are sacred. They are what healing actually looks like. And still, it's okay to want things to be different. To wish the process were quicker, clearer, cleaner. It's okay to feel impatient. It's okay to question whether you're actually making progress. That doubt doesn't make you weak. It makes you honest. And honesty is part of healing too. But in the moments you feel lost, remind yourself, growth is not always loud. Healing is not always linear. Becoming who you're meant to be will not always feel like becoming. Sometimes it feels like undoing. Sometimes it feels like unraveling. But even in the mess, you are moving. If you could zoom out far enough from your own life, you would see the change. You would see the way your nervous system has begun to regulate. the way your reactions have softened, the way your self-talk has shifted, the way you say no now when you used to say yes out of fear. You would see the distance between the you who first started and the you who keeps choosing to stay. The progress is there, it's just often quieter than you expected. Progress can look like sitting in discomfort instead of escaping it, like telling the truth instead of hiding behind silence, like making space for grief, for anger, for joy without needing to rush through any of them, like forgiving yourself for all the versions of you that didn't know better, couldn't do better, or simply needed more time. So today, even if you feel like nothing's changing, remember, you are not who you were. You are not where you started. And even on days when everything feels stuck, your willingness to keep going is change. Healing doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, sometimes it waits. Sometimes it simply breathes. Breathe with it, be patient with it, and when you can't see the progress, trust it's still unfolding beneath the surface, within your heart, and all around you. There comes a point in every healing journey where you're faced with a painful truth. Some things cannot come with you. Some versions of yourself, some relationships, some dreams, even some stories you've told yourself for years have to be released. Not because they were never real, not because they didn't matter, but because healing requires space. And sometimes that space can only be created by letting go. Letting go is not forgetting. It's not pretending something didn't matter. It's not erasing the past. It's the courageous act of loosening your grip, what is no longer aligned with who you are becoming. It's standing at the edge of your own growth and realizing, this pain, this belief, this person, this identity served me once, protected me once, gave me meaning once, but now it's holding me back. And to heal fully, I have to release it. That moment is terrifying, because the things we hold on to most tightly are often tied to our identity. The belief that we always have to be strong. The need to please everyone around us. The person we loved who never loved us back in the way we needed. The shame we carried like armor. Even the chaos we're used to because at least it's familiar. But healing asks us to choose peace over familiarity, freedom over comfort, wholeness over control. Letting go feels like loss at first. It feels like something inside you is dying, and in a way, it is. But it's not the best part of you that dies, it's the fear. The survival mechanism, the outdated story that kept you small. And as it fades, something softer, truer, and more powerful begins to take its place. You don't have to let go all at once. Healing is a process, not an event. Letting go can begin with a whisper. Maybe I don't need this anymore. Maybe I don't need to explain myself to people who refuse to understand. Maybe I don't need to keep proving my worth. Maybe I don't have to carry the guilt that was never mine to begin with. Maybe the love I gave to someone else belongs with me now. Letting go doesn't mean the pain never happened. It means you're choosing not to let it define your future. It means you can remember without reliving. It means you honor the memory, but stop feeding the wound. Because at some point, healing shifts from processing the past to creating the future. And that transition requires clarity. It requires choice. It requires the quiet, trembling decision to stop reopening doors that were never meant to stay open. Sometimes, the hardest thing to let go of is the version of yourself that learned to survive in pain. The one who always held it together. The one who didn't ask for help. The one who believed that love had to be earned, that rest had to be justified, that worth had to be proven. That version of you was brave. That version of you did what they had to do. But you are allowed to evolve. You are allowed to choose a softer path. There's no shame in outgrowing the things that once felt like home. In fact, that's the greatest sign of healing, when what once comforted you now constrains you. When you realize that being needed isn't the same as being loved, that being right isn't the same as being whole, that being seen is more important than being impressive, and as you begin to let go of who you thought you had to be, you make space for who you really are. Sometimes letting go means grieving. It means crying for a relationship that was never what you hoped. It means mourning the time lost in self-abandonment. It means feeling the ache of saying goodbye to what once gave you a sense of safety. Don't rush that grief. Let it move through you. Let it say what it needs to say, but know that on the other side of grief is space. Space for something new. Space for something real. You don't have to let go in bitterness. You can release in love. You can say, "Thank you for what you gave me. Thank you for teaching me. And now, I choose to move forward without you." You can forgive not to excuse what happened, but to free yourself from reliving it. You can bless what was, while still choosing what's next. This isn't easy. Letting go is one of the most courageous acts of healing. It requires trust, trust in the unknown, trust in yourself. Trust that something better awaits, not because life guarantees it, but because you are worthy of it. Because your healing isn't just about escaping pain, it's about creating joy, peace, and meaning on the other side. So ask yourself, what am I still holding on to out of fear? What would it feel like to loosen my grip? What am I making space for when I stop clinging to what no longer serves me? You don't need to answer it all today, but notice the places in your body where you're still bracing. Notice the narratives you keep repeating. Notice the people, habits, or beliefs that drain you more than they nourish you. Healing means noticing. And from noticing comes clarity. And from clarity, choice. Letting go is not the end of the story. It's the turning point. It's the quiet beginning of a life shaped not by pain, but by purpose. For so long, strength has been defined in narrow terms. Strength meant pushing through, staying silent, holding it all together. Strength meant suppressing emotion, pretending you're fine, performing perfection. Somewhere along the way, we were taught that vulnerability was weakness, that rest was laziness, that softness meant fragility. We praised those who smiled through pain, who never asked for help, who sacrificed their own needs for others. But healing forces us to question that definition. Because real strength, the kind that transforms you, doesn't look like stoicism, it looks like truth. Real strength is choosing to feel, to let the pain in, to sit with it without numbing, avoiding, or turning it into anger. It takes immense courage to say, "I'm hurting," especially in a world that rewards emotional suppression. It takes bravery to ask for help when your pride says, "Handle it alone." It takes resilience to rest when the old version of you would have kept grinding. These things don't look powerful on the outside. But internally, they're revolutionary because they go against everything we were taught to believe about what it means to be strong. Strength is being honest about your limits. It's saying no when your body screams for rest. It's choosing boundaries over burnout. It's allowing yourself to break without labeling yourself broken. That's a shift, a radical shift, to go from proving yourself to honoring yourself, from earning love to accepting it, from enduring to healing. In the healing journey, strength often shows up in the smallest ways. In taking a deep breath when anxiety rises, in responding to an old trigger with a new awareness, in being gentle with yourself on days you feel like you've made no progress. These may seem insignificant, but they are acts of self-respect. Every time you choose compassion over criticism, every time you speak to yourself kindly, every time you stay rather than run, you are practicing a new kind of strength. And it's not just internal, it also takes strength to tell the truth out loud, to say, "I'm not okay," and let the silence that follows be filled with something real. It takes strength to walk away from relationships that no longer honor your growth. It takes strength to rewrite the story of your life, especially when the old one is comfortable. But that's the paradox of healing. It asks you to be both soft and strong, to hold grief and grace at once, to be brave enough to break patterns that once felt like protection. So let's stop glorifying the strength that silences emotion. Let's stop admiring the person who sacrifices their peace just to appear composed. That kind of strength may look impressive, but it is unsustainable. It burns out the soul. True strength doesn't deny pain. It integrates it. It learns from it. It transforms it into something meaningful. Sometimes strength is letting go of the need to be understood. Not everyone will understand your healing. Not everyone will support the boundaries you set or the growth you pursue. And that's okay. Strength is continuing anyway. Continuing to choose yourself, your peace, your future even when it's uncomfortable. even when it's lonely, even when it means leaving behind everything you once thought defined you. You don't have to look strong to be strong. Crying doesn't make you weak. Needing support doesn't mean you're failing. Struggling doesn't mean you've lost your progress. Strength is not about how little you feel, it's about how deeply you allow yourself to feel and still move forward. Strength is presence, persistence, patience. It's strong to rest, to pause, to not respond immediately when triggered, to give yourself the space to return to clarity. In fact, choosing not to react is one of the clearest signs of growth. In a world that rushes, strength is slowing down. In a culture that numbs, strength is feeling. In an age of image, strength is authenticity. And let's not forget, strength is also found in joy. In allowing yourself to laugh even after pain, in giving yourself permission to feel good, in reclaiming your right to experience beauty, pleasure, peace. So many of us get stuck in the belief that healing must be hard all the time. But sometimes strength is choosing ease, choosing softness, choosing not to dwell in suffering when joy is available. You are strong when you stop trying to prove your worth, when you stop begging for love, when you stop sacrificing your needs for the sake of being accepted. You are strong when you choose truth over image, when you ask for what you need, when you forgive not to forget, but to free yourself. You are strong when you start over, when you keep going, when you believe in healing even when you can't yet see the results. So if no one's told you lately, your strength is not in how much you've endured, it's in how you're choosing to heal. Quietly, honestly, at your own pace. Strength isn't armor, it's openness, it's surrender, it's trust, and you right now are stronger than you know. One of the most painful lies we internalize on the healing journey is that we're behind, that we should be further along, that everyone else seems to be thriving while we're still picking up pieces. We compare, we scroll through highlight reels, we measure our progress against timelines that were never meant for us. And in doing so, we forget a sacred truth. Healing is not a race. Becoming who you truly are has no deadline. You are not behind, you are becoming. Becoming takes time. Becoming is messy. Becoming isn't always visible. And it often doesn't come with big milestones or public celebration. Sometimes it happens in the quiet of your own mind, the moment you choose to speak to yourself with kindness instead of cruelty. The moment you pause before falling into an old pattern. The moment you say, "This isn't good for me anymore," and actually mean it. These are not small things. These are seismic shifts. The world might not see them, but you feel them, you carry them. And they are shaping you into someone who is not only healing but expanding. You're not behind because your healing isn't linear. You're not behind because you need rest. You're not behind because you're still grieving something others think you should be over. You're not behind because your growth looks different from someone else's. Your path is not supposed to look like theirs. Your healing is not supposed to follow their map. You are not them, and thank God you're not. You are exactly where you need to be for the next step to unfold. And if today that step is simply breathing, staying, not giving up, that matters. Progress doesn't only count when it's loud. Becoming doesn't only happen when you feel strong. Some of the most important transformation happens in moments of doubt. In days when you wonder if you've made any progress at all. Because even then, you are choosing not to retreat, choosing not to abandon yourself, choosing to stay in the process even when it's hard, unclear, or deeply frustrating. That is becoming. Let's talk about pace. The world teaches us to rush, to chase, to conquer. But healing has its own rhythm. And that rhythm cannot be forced. It cannot be rushed. It unfolds when your heart is ready, when your body is safe, when your truth is allowed to rise gently, not through force, but through permission. You're not behind if your trauma still lives in your body. You're not behind if old pain still surfaces. You're not behind if you're still learning how to love yourself, trust yourself, forgive yourself. These are deep, layered processes, and each step forward, no matter how shaky, is a testament to your resilience. Please stop measuring your worth by how fast you're healing. That measurement will always betray you, because true healing cannot be quantified. It is not about speed, it is about depth. It is about truth. It is about building something lasting, not something performative, and lasting change takes time. It takes rebuilding your nervous system, rewiring your beliefs, reclaiming your voice. These are not overnight changes. These are sacred acts of rebecoming. And in that process, it's okay to feel lost sometimes. It's okay to feel unsure. It's okay to question everything. Doubt is not regression, it's a sign you're thinking deeply, feeling deeply, moving through real layers instead of pretending they don't exist. So what if your timeline looks different? So what if someone else seems further along? You don't know what they carry behind the curtain of their curated life. You don't know the pace they're burning themselves at. You don't know what they've bypassed instead of facing. And you don't need to know, because you're not here to live their journey. You're here to live yours. Healing is not a ladder you climb, it's a spiral you move through. And sometimes, spiraling doesn't feel like progress. Sometimes it feels like returning to all pain. But you're not in the same place you were before. This time, you return with new awareness, new capacity, new compassion. You are not starting over, you are starting from experience. If your life doesn't look how you thought it would by now, you're not alone. But please don't confuse timing with failure. What looks like delay may actually be divine protection. What looks like stagnation may be your nervous system integrating deep truths. What looks like falling apart may be the exact breaking open you need to move forward. You are not behind, you are unfolding. And unfolding takes time, like a flower learning the sun, like a child learning trust, like a soul learning to believe again. This is sacred work, and sacred work cannot be rushed. So today, if your mind tells you you're behind, pause, breathe, gently remind yourself, I am not behind, I am becoming, I am healing. I am building something real. I am creating a life I don't have to escape. I am showing up with truth, not performance, and that is enough. You don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to be perfectly healed. You just have to keep choosing yourself over and over again. You just have to keep returning to your truth, even when it's uncomfortable. You just have to keep walking, even when the path isn't clear. Because one day, you'll look back at this chapter, the mess, the doubt, the slow days, the tears, and you will realize, this is where it all changed. Not in a dramatic moment, not in a clean before and after, but in the quiet decision to keep going, to keep believing, to keep becoming, and that, dear soul, is enough.